Okay, I'm going to review another book by this oddball writer, Regis Sprocket, and how he picked that pseudonym, I don't know. Maybe it's his real name. He's rather prolific. He's written about 7 books, screenplays, poetry, and novels, all to release his teeming brain, as John Keats would say about writing the poem Endymion. The book's called Girls, Guitars, and Borscht. Picking Up Women and Starting Tribute Rock Bands in Ukraine, part 1 of the series. I think this is nonfiction, as it really doesn't explicitly state that it's a novel. And he outlines his guitar practicing sessions alongside his impressions of the female populace. He talks about what it's like being a foreigner in a Ukrainian city when he first arrived. Every time I walked down the street a few years ago, girls would ogle me, as I look like no one in the city. Tall and classically Anglo-Saxon, I form a stark contrast to the city's male population. If you look over at a girl as she walks by, she'll always look back in your eyes. They love attention, but these Ukrainian girls get tired of being stared at. They're waiting for you to smile at them or talk to them. So many foreigners, they apparently refer to all of us as sex tourists in some way or another, who come here to stare and make the female Odessites uncomfortable, or go to escorts, brothels, or strip clubs. Especially the Turkish hordes who come in boatloads each summer, steaming Ottoman cockiness, excuse the pun. It's interesting as music, whatever he's listening to or practicing on his guitar, is interspersed with the story's action. Later, I walked up an adjacent lane, following a tall blonde beauty in sheer dress, while listening to Rick Wakeman's Red Planet on my MP3 player. I was thinking I really should try to chat her up. In Odessa, Ukraine one summer, he is overwhelmed by all the hot girls in the streets, and it sends his disciplined musical mind teetering. I walked down a busy boulevard, hundreds of people in the sidewalk. I had Walking in LA by Missing Persons blasting through my earbuds. A cute Jewish-looking petite spinner glided in front of me. I, of course, admired her little butt bouncing beneath her skirt. She knew it and had that usual girlish grin, appreciating my admiration. She skipped into an apartment courtyard, and I wondered what she did at night. Did she live alone? I imagined her caressing herself towards midnight, as the evening's full moon rose gigantically in the late summer sky. He's working on a classic progressive rock song by Yes, and he gives the link, the YouTube link, as well. I worked on Yes's Roundabout, did that today off the above YouTube video. I also have a much more complex guitar tab from an expert I'd found 20 years ago, a guy who had tabbed all the important Yes and Steve Howe songs. The tutor on this video emphasized up and down strokes, and I'd never really thought of this, as I usually just do what comes naturally from listening to the music. But this made a difference in the sound. And the dude had a great sense of rhythm, and the key word here is rhythm, and it's important for this song to get that feel and to make your final version blossom into a good variation or cover of the tune eventually. So he's talking about the difference in a lot of YouTube guitar tutorials for this particular song, and this guy had the rhythm down perfectly. Then he discusses his old school mentality, as he's a lot older than the girls he's admiring. I bet they haven't heard Roundabout. I bet they'd get into it if they gave it a chance, instead of deadening their brains with all this modern hip-hop, rap, trance, computer-generated idiotic dance pop they listen to. I suppose there are some interesting tunes, but it's all sensual lobotomy, noise to me. What do they hear or feel, or what's the artistic paradigm, ideal, or perspective presented by it? What's the philosophy or lifestyle that they wish to embrace? And what does it all mean? Referring to the modern music. Taking a break from composing and practicing guitar, he goes to a wine tasting event which he frequents weekly, and he usually relaxes but sometimes gets socially stressed out. I field a chat from this person and that person and try to be polite while being drawn toward the cute brunette's beautiful slim body. Somehow women in general are not so intuitive. They don't have social radar. They simply superimpose their own wishful thinking upon men. What they see as shyness or reserve is actually a man's discomfort, his desire to escape. I'm waiting for an opening, but the really hot girl is surrounded by others. Then he makes a comment on the pickup artist industry who have, over the decades, seen Eastern Europe as a gold mine. I've been watching this pickup artist videos and reading some books on the subject. Then I read a critique pointing out the negative aspects of this manosphere activity. I notice that there are a lot of contradictions and exceptions to the rules and strategies they teach. It seems like basically they are just improvising and then making temporarily successful pickup techniques into a doctrine. One critic says that all these tricks and lines just get in the way of a man's natural self-confidence and common sense. I somewhat agree. I tend to agree. Often we can figure out things through experimentation, and it would be necessary to cast off the burden of someone else's expertise, quote unquote expertise. We all have a uniquely creative way of acting in the world. That goes for music as well, and science, when ideas come out of empty space. Breaking the monotony of practicing guitar and ogling women, he then writes about volunteering as a model. Yesterday was an unusual day, so I'm sitting on the couch next to a beautiful petite woman with a perfect body, and she's completely naked. It was a nude art photography shoot. Fortunately, I was fully clothed. I played the part of an older, quote-unquote, John, purchasing 2 prostitutes from a madame. The girls were in their 20s. Waiting in the living room of an ornate Victorian-era apartment, everyone was silent as the photographer set up. This went on for several minutes. I suppose everyone was nervous, or the language barrier so dense that it wasn't worth it struggling through the small talk. Pretty soon, 2 of the models would be naked, and I would be posing next to them. The madame was a platinum blonde, very Marilyn Monroe in 1950s dress. I was directed to look into her eyes, handing these 3 $100 bills to her. It was difficult to heat up. It wasn't difficult to heat up and get excited and get emotional gazing into those beautiful blue Slavic orbs. Yet it was awkward, very awkward to hold the stare as the photographer spent 5 minutes focusing the lens. And the Sprocket goes further to talk about the meaning of this book in general. How is this adding up to be a progressive rock tribute band? Well, I'm just learning good tunes. Well, I suppose you could call it a classic rock and guitar virtuoso pop tribute band. Sure, I could do a 2-guitar synth and box drum version of ELP's Carnival or Squonk by Genesis, or just an unplugged folk version of Tarkus and Gates of Delirium. Just want to play good music that I like. It'd be awesome to play the Moody Blues You and Me, or Yeses and You and I. So finally, finished Moody Blues, Justin Hayward's Story in Your Eyes and Forever to Be Alone demo. Posted it on Instagram and YouTube, and later put them on private because I wasn't really satisfied with my singing. As well, some subscriber or viewer keeps downvoting my videos. I'm thinking it must be one person continually, as often my vids hardly get any views anyway, so it must be one person that's targeting my videos and always downvotes them. The weather's getting colder. It ain't Southern California. Tonight it'll get down to the low 30s Fahrenheit. below freezing. Today, I practice Strawberry Fields Forever and Mediterranean Sundance by Paco de Lucia. I'm quite eclectic, also a vigorous performance of Classical Gas by Mason Williams and Callejón del Muro by Paco de Lucia. I took a walk through the wet, chilly 19th century Old Town. You'd see lovely young women walking around. Or lonely. You'd see lonely young women walking around. Why? They seemed like they were out looking for a pal to cuddle up during the cold night when temperatures would hit freezing. It's just the vibe issuing from their posture and their eyes. So this book's Girls, Guitar, and Borscht, starting a tribute band and picking up girls in Ukraine, is on Amazon Kindle. Thanks for listening.